This is the first Yolol tutorial, and we're going to go over some hardware and examples on how to use it. There are 4 different types of Yolol chips. You have the basic, the advanced, the professional, and then the memory chip, right? So the memory chip will store data in fields, but it doesn't actually execute any script. So with the chips that execute script, each tier has additional functions as well as functions from the previous tier. So with the basic, you have a bunch of different assignment options in addition to like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then with the advanced chip, you have exponents and also a special function for square root and absolute value. But you also have modulus assignment and factorial. So now with the professional chip, it just gets trig functions like sine, cosine, a sine, a cosine, and a little more specialized, a little more expensive, especially as you go up the tiers, but useful in some situations. There's normally ways to get around using trig functions though, but that's a different video. Alright, so now if we actually go into test mode and open up our chip, this is a little demonstration on internal and external variables. So let's see. So, the 2 types of variables, right? So you have an internal variable and you have an external variable. In all external variables, whether it's lights or a data field in a memory chip, right, they'll all be referenced using the colon. So, we can also have, a variable with the same name technically as as an external variable, and these will be marked as like 2 separate things, right? And so an important function to learn too is just the goto, right? And so how the goto works is it takes the value of what's ever behind it, right? And then we'll go to that line. Now it performs like a floor function, so if I have like 1.9, it's still going to 1 and not to 2, right? Or if I have like 2.8, oh boy, if I have like a 2.8, right, it's still going to 2. So now since our a variable, right, is 2, since it's defined up here, that will still go to 2. And if I remove this, so external a is 3, then if we put a colon here, boom, now it's going to 3. Okay, and if you want to have like a and then still wanted to go to 3, parentheses a plus 1 still goes to 3, right? Okay. In addition to that though, you do have a character limit. There's 70 characters per line, and if you're looking in like test mode, that takes up the entire line on the Yolol chip. Although it's a little different if you're back in the designer mode. It's gonna take a second, where you have like the expandable window, right, and it doesn't really give you a stopping point, at least right now. So if we go into Yolol script editor, right, we can see that there's no actual stopping point. Now I have something that's roughly the size of a chip here, but it goes. So let me control Z to get that back. Okay. Alright. So, additionally, as you just saw, right, you just left click, pull down on the lock to open the chip. You can also lock it again from that button. And then you can pause it from here and restart it. Now, this is battery life up in the top corner, but it's just a graphical thing. It doesn't actually do anything. And the chip read speed is 5 lines per second, so it's pretty slow, but so if we hit U here, or while we're not in the chip, if we hit U, we can see that the chip weight for any negative number, let me just show that real quick. So if we go like 3 or something, right, it's still paused. But it only -1 actually works for the little red indicator on the line, right? Which is interesting. And then if we go to 0, that makes it active, and any positive number makes it into a timer, and it'll just count down. So it's counting down, and now it's running again. Alright, now Yolol chips need to be hooked up to electricity, whether that's a battery or a generator. And if we make this go to 1, yep, okay. Then as we look into our Yolol memory chip, right, the values will change as the line gets red. So very simple. But if I do something like, let's see, whoop, let's turn this to a 7. Let's do 5. Yeah, that's good. Alright, you see, no 7s, no 5s, because this is just an external variables, not internal stuff. Alright, so in addition to that, right, we have the, this is called a Yolol chip socket, right? So, very useful for, being able to edit code on the fly too, especially if you have maybe like a tunnel or a special compartment on your ship. But if you need storage density, right, you have the Yolol chip racks. And so there's 2 different variants, which is, these are like actual little parts that you kind of have to assemble in the designer, right? So the 2 slot is only one that actually takes in power through the face. And you need at least one of the 2 slots to get like a modular assembly powered for Yolol chip stuff, right? So these modular racks, right, they will transfer power and data, but you need at least one of these, but you can have like an infinite amount of these technically connected to in a line or however, and it will all get power from just one of the 2 face ones. And it takes very, very little power for Yolol chips to run, but they do take power, so keep that in mind if you're making like a lock for a door or something like that in Yolol, not using certain types of buttons. Okay, on the other hand though, we have a memory relay and a network relay. So the memory relay takes 2 chips, right? So one is the master chip, one is the clone chip, and fields on the master chip, their values will be mirrored onto the clone chip. So it only pushes values though if the values on the clone chip are being updated. So it's not like a guaranteed thing. Okay. Oh, let me actually show that real quick, right? Because you can't actually do that manually as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'll show that later when I actually have a setup with power, just to be sure. But anyhow, so if you have a variable like one of the stored battery things, right? Stored battery power, or a gas network storage resource. If you name that to a memory chip, these values will actually be pushed onto the Yolol network. So they will update values in the memory chip, and that's an effective way to rename values from these like super long default values to something manageable. Alright, so on the other hand, you have the network relay, and this will basically just take a Yolol network on one side and then mirror data and variables to a subnetwork. And you can enable and disable these things with the field that's inside of the network relay, or the memory relay, in fact. And just to keep in mind with the memory relay, if you don't have these sides connected, these are actually separate data networks. So that's also kind of another way to do things if you're careful. All right. On to some examples. So here's what I was just talking about down there, right? If we have the function from the propellant frame, the data will be pushed onto here. Now if this was actually changing, then we would see that here, but sadly this little setup doesn't work because of a durability issue. So if I go into this battery with you, click in, hit Control A, Control C, and then hit U to close that out, look at the chip, hit U, and then rename this, Control V, hit enter. That's very important, otherwise it won't update. Now we can see that this is actually, you know, taking in power, and that this is changing, and they should match each other. Let's just show that real quick. There you go. Now if we look into this yellow chip, right, this is also changing, but if we disable mastering, yoink, boom, so this is updating, this is not. Alright, so here's a little example with, you know, accessing external variables on Yolol devices with a basic Yolol chip. And don't mind any of this stuff, right? This is just so I don't have to completely remember the code from scratch. This technically doesn't always doesn't quite work, but anyways. So let's delete this. I had to go to 1. Whoops, there we go. Alright. So line 1, T is the amount of times we repeat. And then if we go down, you know, D is equal to 10, right? So this is going to be our delay variable. This is going to be how many times it repeats. You know, actually, let's just set that to 2 because that'll make more sense in a little bit. And so keep in mind the line read speed, right? So this is a delay of 2 seconds, right? Because just 0.2 times 10. Alright, so now we'll also make sure we're starting on a clean slate. So lamp on is equal to 0. You have to make sure you have that colon there. Otherwise, you'll probably get a syntax error since you haven't defined lamp on. Let me just show that real quick. Go to 2, lamp on. Good. See, now it works. Oh yeah, them out. It's just defining lamp on. Okay. So go to T plus 1. I think I talked about this earlier, but if you're trying to get it to read like, you know, an integer plus some variable or a variable plus a variable, right, you need the parentheses so it knows that these are the same thing. Alright, so on to the next line. This is going to be our delay function, so we're just going to set that up. If d is greater than 0, then end, right? This is always needed for an if statement, the then, end, and the conditional. Because as we see, go to 3, go to 3, go to 3, there we go. Actually, let's see if... Alright, see, this is actually, you know, proper syntax, but if we leave this off, boom, now it skips because of the syntax error. Alright, so let's get rid of that. So d is greater than 0, then what we want to do is we want to subtract d by 1, right? So d minus equals 1. This is one way to do it. This will work with, you know, variables, external variables, or, you know, any integer, not just one. And I'll show you a less character intensive way to do that later, just by a little bit. But every character counts, especially if you're doing complicated stuff. Alright, so d minus equals 1, and we're going to turn lamp on to 1. That should turn the lamp on. There we go. And in addition to that, go to 3, right? So each time this passes, you know, this condition will be met because, you know, d is greater than 10, then it will subtract by 1, and then it will go to the same line again as long as this is met. Alright, so on, let's see, let me turn lamp on after that so we can see that there's actually a delay. turn it off. Lamp on, off, there, or set it to 0. You know what I mean. Yeah, so lamp on 0, it'll go through here, right? If D's, let's set a new D variable. D is equal to 2, there we go, so D is greater than 0, then D minus minus. This is an increment by -1, so you know, D minus 1 is now the new D. Alright, so lamp on is equal to 1, turn the light back on, go to 5, that sets up the delay function, and then yeah, we should just be able to go to the next line. Oh, so you can navigate the Yolol stuff with the arrow keys, by the way, in case you don't want to use your mouse all the time. So let's see, what do we have next? Okay, so okay, so if T is greater than 0, then T minus minus, let's see, so lamp set off over there, go to 2. And go to 2, because might as well. Alright, so now it just ran twice, right? And now it's not running. Alright, so that's a pretty effective way of, you know, letting this do stuff. Alright, so let me set T to some a little higher, like 10. Let's set it here too. Lastly, I can just make it skip. There we go. Ah, psych. T is equal to 10. And boom. Okay, there we go. Oh my god, is it done already? What's it? What in the world? Did I mess something up? Oh. I see. Okay, let me hurry then. Okay. Oh my, okay. Well, that's embarrassing. Okay. If I'm quick, there we go. Okay. So the chip weight on this thing, right? The field and the button is the same field, right? So set that to -1. Now the code is not executing. There we go. That took way too long to show off. Okay. So turn that back on, and this will stop blinking in a moment. Okay. So also one thing to show before this video ends, right? We can turn mastering off, and as you could probably tell in a little bit before, these two lights were turning on and off at the same time. But now, since the subnetwork is, you know, no longer being copied or copying since the subnetwork is no longer getting variables from the main network, if we make this skip again, or actually, yeah, that works too, I guess, right? So these values are not updating. Alright, well, that's the end of this video. In the future, I'll probably do some stuff on like optimization and yeah, I mean mainly optimization. I might go over the different operators and how you can use them. But you know, hardware stuff is always important, especially, you know, because all this stuff has plenty of uses. And you know, like a good use for these things is like if you have like rows of generators and stuff, right, and you want fuel rods from one row to deplete at a time, you can, you know, set that up pretty easy with relays, network relays. That's the end of this video. Please leave a like or subscribe, and feel free to check out our website or Discord for more information.